They've been there for several hours. This guy's refusing to leave, even though it's illegal for him to camp there. Cops are kind of tired of dealing with them, and we'll watch and then we'll talk. All right, not a good shoot. Not a good shoot. And those guys were charged. I don't know if they were convicted. I didn't look. I forgot to look it up. But they were charged with murder. Did you have a question before you turn to this?
Sorry. Did the person that had the camera also shoot?
Yeah, so he asked the person with the camera, did he also shoot? Yes, he did shoot. The camera's like attached to the side of his helmet, and he's the one with the rifle. So, a couple of different things we should have seen there. Did you see the homeless guy at one point start picking up his stuff? What's our goal? Get him to leave. Okay, we've been there for 4, 6, 8 hours in this situation, whatever it was. It was a while. I don't remember exactly. What's another 30 minutes? He's picking up his stuff. Let's keep talking. Let's keep moving them without using force. What's our goal? Don't forget that. Okay, so when did the guy get shot? So they threw what's called a flashbang. That was that big, loud poof in that cloud. Okay, it's a distraction device. You know, the tactile side of my brain, not a big deal. That canine handler released his worthless dog. That dog, worthless. Probably never seen a flashbang before. What'd that dog do? Went right up to the dude and just kind of sniffing around. So what'd the dog handler do? I think he gets concerned that his dog's about to get stabbed. So what does he do? He runs right up to where the dog's at, within feet of the dude with the knife. Who put themselves in a bad spot? That dude did. That canine handler put himself in a lethal spot, or at least a spot to get stabbed. Okay, I don't know what the guy with the rifle down here. I don't know what he observed or what he thought he did. But so the guy with the knives does one of these things, and he gets shot and killed. Right? If that canine officer had never moved up, I don't think this would have happened. That officer put himself in that spot to get that guy shot and killed. And again, at least the guy with the rifle down here with the video is on his head. He got charged with murder. I don't know about the rest of them. So again, train your officers not to put themselves in a bad spot, and they won't have to use force to get out of it. Does that make sense, everybody? All right. When safe and when circumstances permit, officers shall use de-escalation tactics in order to reduce the need of force. This comes straight from Seattle. Okay, Seattle is under the consent decree. So they can't run their own department. They're too corrupt. The federal government has to come in and run it, more or less. This is straight from their policy. So when safe, which at least that's in there, when safe, and when the circumstances permit, officers shall. There's no will. There's no should. There's no, you probably oughta. You shall use de-escalation tactics. Right? It's something good to remember. If we can talk people into doing what we want them to do, and we never have to touch them, that should always be our goal. That should always be your goal as a security team into your church. All right? What's important now? Real easy acronym, WIN. What's important? Get this guy to comply with whatever we want him to do without ever having to touch him. That's what's important. Does that make sense, everybody? Questions, comments, concerns? All right. I'm going to move on just a little bit. Start talking about some of the things that could happen within your church, and are we prepared? So let's talk about medical first. Do you have a first aid kit in your church? Probably. Right now, show of hand. No, you don't show your hands. Just think to yourself. How many people right now know where that first aid kit's at your church? Everybody else, how many people are going, man, I hope we have a first aid kit at our church? Okay? You should know that. That should be good information to have. How old is it? How old is it? Did someone buy it back in 1990 and from Walmart and it's just been sitting in a drawer ever since? I don't know. That's good information to have. Okay? We had a summer camp last summer. I think we used a lot of the Band-Aids up in that, because we were playing soccer or whatever. Did we replace those Band-Aids? I don't know. How old is it? When was the last time it was restocked? That's good information to have. All right? Do you have a trauma kit at your church? There's a difference, okay? A first aid kit is a boo-boo kit. It might have Band-Aids. It might have some gauze. It might have some ointment in case you get like a real nasty sunburn. It might have some Tylenol. Minor stuff. Okay? Do you have a trauma kit? You probably don't, in reality. I don't know of a single church that does. If you do, great. The difference, what's in your trauma kit? You can handle a traumatic injury, a stabbing, a shooting. How about a compound fracture to the leg? Something like that, right? There's a very, very horrible motorcycle accident right in front of your church and a dude gets his arm ripped off. Can we handle that? Can we stop massive bleeding while AMR's en route? Things like that. That's what a trauma kit is for. If you have that type of stuff, are you trained to use it? Is anybody in your congregation? Is there anybody in your congregation that's an EMT, a paramedic, that used to be in the military, something like that? Do they have one in their car? I can tell you personally, if I drive my Jeep to my church, I have a full-blown trauma kit in my Jeep. I can handle everything from the boo-boo to multiple gunshot wounds. It's in my Jeep. I don't take it inside, but I know that. So like if something bad happens, there's a bad motorcycle wreck or a bad accident, I can send my wife to the Jeep to go grab my kit. That's good information to have. So even if the church doesn't, maybe you should just ask around. Does anybody have this type of material? Good knowledge to have. Okay? Do you have an AED? If you don't, they're probably expensive. I haven't looked. And in reality, you should probably buy one. Okay? It doesn't matter how big your church is. It is inevitable at some point there's going to be a medical inside every one of your churches. It could be a broken finger. It could be a heart attack. The older your congregation is, honestly, the more highly likely it's going to happen. These things are awesome. They save lives. They're simple. They're very, very simple. I'm a cop. Okay? I can do it. You can do it. All right? Very simple. You take these two leads out. There's a little pitcher. You stick one on the side, one on the chest. You just follow the pitcher. Literally, it's just do that. The computer talks to you. The machine tells you what to do at that point. It'll say start CPR. It'll say don't touch. It'll say shock. And then there's a big button that says shock on it. You push the button. Simple. It literally will tell you everything to do. It's really awesome. If you don't have one, you should really look into buying one. If you have a big church, you should probably look into buying 2 or 3. Okay? Reality. Again, who's trained to use it? Talk about calling 911. I know I mentioned a few times before. Is someone on your security team designated the 911 caller? They should be. How many people in here know the address of their church off the top of their head? Most everybody. Okay? If you call 911 and you're like, hey, I'm at whatever church, dispatch should be able to type that in and get your address. Do you want to bet your life or someone else's life on it should be in the computer? What did I say at the beginning of this training? You should have been contacted by a community officer because I have a list of 250 churches. I know for a fact not everybody was contacted. Okay? Have someone designated as your 911 caller. You should identify this person as being calm under pressure. I need to be able to relay information calmly, accurately over the phone. Does it do you any good if Dino is screaming into the phone that there's a medical? Doesn't do you any good. Got to be calm, got to be able to relay actual information, know your address. You should also, in reality, type up your address, laminate it, and have it at every phone in your church. Okay? In an event of emergency, are people going to use the landline? Probably not. I understand that. They're probably going to use their cell phones. But the nice thing about that, if they don't know the address, GPS from the cell phones will match up with the GPS in the computers a lot of times, and that'll still work. But make yourself, just make it as easy as possible on yourself. Laminate your address, have it next to every single phone in the church. Why not? It doesn't cost hardly anything, and it can potentially save someone's life. You should have some type of medical training, okay? You should know how to do CPR. You should know the Heimlich maneuver. You should know how to use the AED, okay? Basic first aid. These are all important things. The city has training courses. Contact Emergency Management back there. They put on courses like this all of the time. Jim, are they free?
They are for a while longer. Yep.
Okay, right now, the courses are free. If they're not, pay the money. Honestly, pay the money. You're going to have the knowledge that you can now take with you to your church, to your business, at home, to the restaurant, whatever the case is. It's good information to have. Okay. Do you have an evacuation plan? Have you ever thought about, we need to evacuate the entire church right now? Okay? There's a fire. Obviously, that's the easy one. There's a fire in the basement. Is it just going to be, hey, folks, there's a fire. Y'all need to move toward the door? That may work. If you have a real big church, that might be a really big mess. You should have an evacuation plan. You should practice it with your security staff. Where are they going to position themselves? Are they going to be able to usher people out? What are you going to do with your older members of your congregation? Are they wheelchair bound? Do they have walkers? Are you going to talk with them? Hey, in the event of an emergency, and let's be honest, things are really bad, something's happening, you're going to take extra time. You need to stay in your seat, let people move, and then security staff will come move you once the rest of the congregation has moved on. That might be a hard conversation to have, all right? But these are things you need to think about. If there's an armed intruder, you may or may not want to evacuate. Let's say there's someone that came through a back door or a basement door and one of your security team encounters them. And let's just say you have a radio system. Hey, there's a guy down here with a gun. No shooting yet, but there's someone down here with a gun and they're saying they're going to kill everybody. Maybe we go into lockdown, or maybe we have time to get people out of the building. If there's no targets, there's hopefully no victims, right? Every situation's different. Again, something to think about. Do you use a code word if you're going to evacuate, or do you use just plain talk? Again, it's up to you. A lot of schools will go with a multiple lockdown system, like code green, or let's say code yellow is like super low-key lockdown. We lock all the exterior doors. Maybe the police were involved in a car chase and they crashed right out front of the school, or in this case, right out front of the church. Nothing says the guy bailed on foot and got into the church, but because there's something going on, we're just going to make sure everything's locked up. Everything in the church is going on like normal. Congregation might not even have any idea what's going on, but we're on a light lockdown. Well, hey, now the cops are knocking on the door. We think we might have seen them come through your back door before you got a chance to lock the door. So maybe now we go into a code orange, which is a moderate lockdown. So maybe now everybody's in the congregation, or in the sanctuary, and we lock the sanctuary up. And we have people stationed at every door. So no one can come get into the sanctuary, and now the police are searching the building. So we've isolated the congregation, we're keeping them safe, let the police do what they're going to do. And then maybe there's a code red, full-blown lockdown, that's where you're hiding in closets, underneath desks, whatever the case is. You're turning off lights, you're silencing cell phones. We're going to get into armed intruder response and run, hide, fight. But maybe that's your full-blown code red lockdown. That's just an example. Do you use code words or use plain talk? It's up to you. If you do, once you move outside, move to a pre-designated location. Okay? Do I just get to my car and leave? Probably not. I'm not going to tell you you're not going to. Every situation's different. But should the church have a head count? If you're going to have a head count after an emergency to make sure everybody's there, you probably should have made sure you did one before there was an emergency. Okay? Food for thought. If you want to have a head count, just make it a habit. We know how many people are inside the sanctuary today or every single Sunday. Okay? But it's a good idea. Fire, whatever the case is, once we're outside, go through our little head count, make sure we didn't leave anybody. Do you have a plan to reunite parents and kids if you have a nursery or you have a Sunday school group or something like that? What is your plan there? Is it just get the kids out, get the parents out, let them maybe you have designated areas? Again, you have to think about it. What is your church? What's good for your church? Assist those who need it. Again, you might have to have the conversation though. Hey, let's be honest, Bob, you're not moving very fast these days. You might have to stay seated until we get at least the first half of the congregation through the sanctuary, and then a security staff will come by and help you out. All right? Things to think about. What about a lockdown? Okay? Tornado drill. Again, the easiest example. Do you have a tornado plan at your church? Have you ever practiced it? You did in school. Have you done it in your church? Honestly, you probably should if you haven't. Again, I gave the example of an armed intruder lockdown. If you're in a full-blown code red, bad guys inside your church lockdown, okay, Close windows if possible. All right, if you have windows in their door, either cover those up or be out of sight of those windows. Turn off lights. Silence your cell phones, not just vibrate your cell phones. Either turn them off or silence them. Right? That's important. Now, I like silencing your cell phone. I don't want you talking on your cell phone because you don't know, let's say, where the gunman is at. Right? So if you start talking and you're too loud, then he can find you, right? But that doesn't mean you can't text someone what's going on and they can call 911 for you and relay that information. If you don't know how to text, ask the teenager next to you. He has 3 phones and he's doing it already. All right? What about, I'm going to fall off this stage before the end of the night, I promise. What about just calling 911 and putting the phone on the ground and leaving an open line? So let's say it's a known member of your congregation. Billy, what are you doing? You need to put that shotgun down. So what is dispatch here? Suspect's name is Billy and he's armed with a shotgun. What's that getting relayed to the cops? Billy has a shotgun, right? Hey man, dude, I'm sorry I hid in the utility closet in the back of the church. You know, I'm sorry I didn't follow your command. Whatever the case is, if you can get out information like that, dispatch is going to hear it, they're going to relay it to us. So I like the idea of having the open line if you feel comfortable with doing that. But again, food for thought. It's just for you to think about. Understand the difference. Okay, evacuation, you're removing the congregation. Lockdown, you're trying to keep the bad thing from the congregation. Again, evacuation, fires, gas leaks, possibly an armed intruder. Lockdown, same thing we talk about. Possibly an armed intruder, tornadoes, anything like that. For whatever reason, I couldn't get this video to actually attach to the PowerPoint. This is just a real good explanation of different lockdown procedures that a specific school is doing.
At St. Bernard High School, we would like to continue to keep all of you safe. Acts of violence throughout the country have prompted our school to reevaluate our safety plan. After consulting with various law enforcement agencies, we will be having our first lockdown drill this week. Our teachers have already been instructed on what to do. Our school has 3 threat levels: green, yellow, and red. Green, or level 1, means there is a secure environment and the school operates normally. If the threat level rises, we will be informed by our assistant principal through the PA system. A yellow threat level means that there is a possible threat and the school will be placed on a soft lockdown. Teachers will make sure that the doors are locked and windows are covered. All outside activities will be canceled and we will remain in our classrooms until the all clear is given. If you are in the hallways or bathroom during a yellow threat, please return to your classroom as soon as possible. During a soft lockdown, the door should be only opened for an administrator. If there is ever a life-threatening situation on our campus, the threat level will be raised to red. This will place the school on a hard lockdown. Teachers will make sure that doors are locked and all windows are covered. You will be instructed by your teacher to move away from any windows or doors. The teacher will then turn off the lights. It is important that you remain silent. The door should only be opened for police. If you are in the hallway or the bathroom during a red threat level, please try to find a secure place. Ideally, remain in the bathroom. Close the door, turn off the lights, and find a safe place to stay until all clear is given. During an emergency, it is important to remember the following. iPads should be placed in your book bag and all bags should be stored under your desk. Remain silent. Listen to your teacher's instructions. And most importantly, be prepared and remain calm. If the danger is directly outside where you are, find cover immediately, positioning yourself in a way that allows you to move quickly if needed. If you have access to a phone, dial 911. you cannot speak, leave the line open. Blockade the doors with desks or any furniture you can find. Always be aware of where exits are. If there is a shooter at close range and you cannot flee, your chance of survival is much greater if you try to incapacitate him or her. Be aggressive, yell, throw things at him or her, and or try to take him or her down. When law enforcement arrives, remain calm, hands in the air, no drastic movements, and follow directions. The principal or his designee will give the all clear when everything is safe. It is important that you take all drills seriously. If you have any questions about the drill or a school safety plan, feel free to speak with your teacher or see Ms. Alvarez.
So that's just an example. Okay, she covered a lot of stuff in there. Who gets on the PA announces that there's a lockdown? The assistant principal. So how does that relate to you guys? Who's calling 911? Have someone designated, right? She went through their level of system. Again, may or may not be appropriate for your church. She went in to basically run, hide, fight. We're going to talk about that later as far as if you need to fight someone, if you need to get out, we're going to talk about that. But she went over a lot of information. Again, just food for thought, something for you to think about when you go back to your church. So I kind of mentioned earlier about the nursery. If you're going to evacuate, what's your plan for the nursery? Something like that. Do you have any actual plan for your nursery if you have one in your school, in your church? If you have a bunch of little kids separated from their parents, do you have any written directive whatsoever? I don't know. It's something to think about if you don't, right? I have in there a check-in, check-out system. I think this is a good idea. If mom comes down and drops kid off, kid has a sticker, mom gets the same sticker. You have to match stickers to get kid back, right? If you have a small church or a moderate-sized church, probably not a big deal. You probably know who mom and dad are anyway, okay? I get that. However, let's say that, my church doesn't have a nursery, but let's say we did. My daughter's down there. My brother's visiting from Seattle. He goes down there to get his niece so we can go to dinner. I would much rather be him coming up upset, complaining and grumbling because the church wouldn't give him his niece than him come back up with my daughter. Because do they know, hey, this dude is Josh's brother and it's okay for him to have the Addie, which is my daughter. You know? It's just something to think about. Is that important? It's important as far as trying to limit any type of issues with kids, any type of crimes that can be committed toward kids, abductions, anything like that. It might help in the case of a domestic as far as keeping kids separated from a parent, or if there's any type of custody dispute, something like that. May or may not. It might make the case worse, but at least that time you can get a police involved. It's just food for thought. Is your church big enough? Do you have a big enough nursery, a big enough need to have a system like that? Oh, if you go into a lockdown or an evacuation, do you have security staff assigned, hey, no matter what's happening, your job is the nursery? If you don't, you probably should. Again, you're probably going to have one or two adults down there with however many kids. You should have a security team member assigned to them, A, for protection, or B, to help them get out of the building. So why are churches targeted when we talk about shootings or any type of violence? Well, the term in the media a lot of times they're considered soft targets. Why are they considered soft targets? Well, there's usually not a lot of security at churches. There's usually not the buildings aren't necessarily hardened, if you will. There's usually not a lot of guns, things like that. So let's do a few things and maybe change that up a little bit. Camera systems. Does your church have any? Do you want them? Again, it's up to you. If you do have cameras, if you have a security system, is it a monitored system or does it record? There's a difference. If you have a security system and it records, let's say it goes to the internet, whatever the case is, that's evidence, right? Something bad happens at your church, that's evidence. That's after the fact. If you have a live feed, let's say going to a TV into the room that runs the sound system for your entire church, and you have someone in that room running sound for every single church service, and they can literally look up at a TV and watch a live feed of the front door, now we're talking about a potential security measure. Can he see a gunman walking through the parking lot heading toward the front door before he gets on campus or into the building? Maybe, maybe not. If he can, though, and he can get on the radio and relay that information, can we get that front door locked before they can get inside the building? Hopefully. Okay? So just understand the difference. And again, does the church want to spend the money? Motion lights. Lights are important. The more lights you have around a building, usually the safer it is. Okay? Bad guys like to operate in the dark for a reason. Eliminate that darkness. Put a lot of light up. Motion lights, just hardwired external lights, whatever the case is. Motion lights may save you a little bit of money in the long run because they're not on all the time. But again, more and more light. How lit up is your parking lot? Do you have lights in your parking lot? Is that a big deal to you? Well, in the middle of December, on a Wednesday night after service or after Wednesday events, is it dark in the parking lot? It's probably dark in the parking lot before you ever get to church. So it's a good idea to have lights out there. If you're going to have some Sunday school event where kids are staying until 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night during the summertime, do we want to have lights on the outside of our building? Absolutely. So again, just look at the lighting conditions. Where are the shadows? So one thing I teach, when I used to teach building clearing, especially in the darkness, because the way cops clear buildings with flashlights and guns is different than what you would probably think. I would always tell my guys, every black hole, every dark hole has a gun. That's just how we kind of have to operate. So if I'm clearing a building, you don't want to put your back to an unknown black hole. There's a gun there, right? Think the same way if you're talking about just building security. How much darkness can we eliminate? I'm not saying spend $1 billion on lighting, but be reasonable and try to eliminate as much darkness as you can around the building and around your parking lot. Locking doors. Okay, so this is one of those things that I brought up last Thursday and I got quite a bit of pushback. So if you guys have questions or comments, let's hear it. Here's my thoughts. Okay, churches should be open, inviting places. Agreed? Everybody should be welcome to come into church, any church, pray, go to service, whatever the case is. I agree. However, once church has started, I think the doors need to be locked. I think you need to secure your building. Maybe give it 10 minutes after church has started. Church starts at 10. We lock all external doors at 10:10. With that in mind, keep an usher, maybe a security team member by the door, so when Josh with his kids is showing up late to church, like every other Sunday, they can open up the door and let me in. I'm not trying to be inconvenient to anybody. But think about it. So right now, if you're in church, you're sitting and you're listening to the lecture or whatever you're doing, who's walking around your church in the hallways behind you? I don't know. If you leave your building completely unsecure, all the doors are open, who's monitoring who's coming in the building and who's not? Most everybody probably comes in the main entrance, right? 80, 90% of your people. So if you're like, hey, I bet you if someone's going to come in, they're going to come in this door right here. But does that mean your back door's locked and people can't come through that door? I don't know. I think you need to lock your doors. I think you need to secure the building, right? Again, keep someone back there. He's coming with a mic. Keep someone back there, let them in, but lock it. With that being said, how old is your church and what safety features do you have? Does your doors have push bars so I can lock the church, but in the event of a fire, you can push on it and escape? If you do, I say lock your doors. If it's an old church and you just deadbolt all your doors, don't lock your church. Get new doors, then lock your church. Okay? You can't deadbolt everybody in. If there's a fire, that's bad news, right? So you can't trap people in. You have to make sure they have an avenue of escape, but do secure it from the outside so people can't just come wandering around. Yes, sir?
Yeah, you're talking about your doors. Would we put those signs up with no guns on the doors? Are we telling people then there's no guns inside and we're giving them a little leeway that, hey, this is a very good place to go into?
That's one way to think about it. I mean, if you go into a gun-free zone, what do you see? Signs that say no guns. That's reality, right? Is it illegal for me to carry a gun into a store that has no gun sign? The answer is no, it's not. Okay, they're telling you they don't want guns in there, and they can tell you that, hey, this is private property, I can ask you to leave, which they have the right to do so, but it's not illegal. But what you're telling bad people is that there's no guns in here because I don't want guns in here. I am visibly telling everybody not to bring a gun inside. So, I mean, that's a way to think about it.
Does that make it easier then to sometimes bring trouble on you? Or have you ever had that discussion? Or
Well, I mean, that is a national-wide debate.
is it? Okay.
I mean, that's the debate. Does a gun-free zone bring more violence compared to a non-gun-free zone?
Because I know on a lot of churches have bulletins and they have like how much their offering was, intake, year-to-date budget. That's information for the guy that wants to rob that church and for whatever happened. Plus now he knows there's no guns allowed there. I mean, I would think that would be inviting.
I don't disagree with you, but like I said, every church is different, every congregation is different. That is something that each and every individual church is going to have to talk about and decide. You had a question?
Well, along the same line, if you put up a sign that says this is a no gun zone,
Okay.
but your church does have armed security inside,
Okay.
is there any legal ramifications that could be involved if an individual were to come in with the intent of doing bad things and beating someone with a gun when there's signs on the door saying no guns?
It is not. So the question is, if I understand your question correctly, if I carry a gun into your church, you have an armed security team, I'm an outsider, I bring a gun into your church, am I looking at a criminal charge for doing so? Or am I looking at an additional criminal charge if I do something illegal with that?
Would the church face charges if they
no.
were to face the intruder with armed security?
Nope. Shouldn't. Again, every situation is different. If they do it in a legal, reasonable form, I walk in with a gun, I'm talking about shooting the place up, I encounter an armed security, and they shoot me before I shoot someone, no, you're not going to look at charges. If I walk in with a gun on my hip and you come immediately around the corner and blast me in the chest because I have a gun in a holster, then yes. But, worst case scenario, you have armed security, encounter a gunman intent on committing mass murder, no, you're not going to look at charges. I wouldn't imagine. I'll put it that way. I'm not an attorney, but you shouldn't. Any other questions about locking your doors? One of the things I brought up last week, how I kind of related it, if you think back into like the early 90s, think of your schools across the country. Could you walk into any school, elementary through high school, could you just walk up at any school, open the door and walk in and roam the hall? You could. What were they considered those times? Open, inviting places. Kids should be able to come here and be safe. Come to school. Right now, can you go to any school and get to where the kids are at? Nope. They're secure. You might be able to get through a door to get to the main office, but you shouldn't get through doors to get to where the students are at. You shouldn't be allowed to. Everything is locked down. Everything's secured because schools were considered soft targets. Now, unfortunately, there's still school shootings, but it is much harder now than it was 10 years ago. Churches are facing that same fight right now, in my opinion. So again, I would highly suggest locking your doors if you can. All right?
Hey, Josh,
Sir?
can you touch on that a little bit more? Because people need to understand there's a much greater risk to your children than an active shooter.
So active shooters get a lot of press, right? Because it's an overt violent act and it's targeting kids. What about the guy the registered sex offender that can just walk in and snatch somebody? What about the dope that just runs in and out of your school? Or hopefully not in your churches, but let's be honest. If you have a large congregation of kids, the likelihood of some drugs somewhere is pretty high, right? The more secure you are, the less likely you're going to have that. What type of neighborhood, let's be honest, what kind of neighborhood is your church in? Okay? I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but can the neighborhood could they potentially bring bad stuff into your church? Potentially. I can tell you my church is located at 8th and Buchanan. Okay? I know they brought a guy in several times. They fed him. Nice guy. I talked to him. In a professional manner, though, I've talked to him when I've taken meth off of him. Okay? And those times he was in my church, he was calm, he was cool, he was very thankful. Okay? But flip that over to he's high. How easy for him to flip out and we can have an incident in the church. Okay? It's easy as the push of a syringe. That's reality. Right? Securing the building, churches, schools, just keeps everybody safer. Everybody safer. It needs to be an open, inviting place. But when they're there, we need to keep them safe. All right? Some other things to think about. Again, it depends on how much money you want to spend. Depends on how big your church is. I threw on there an intercom buzz system that may or may not be appropriate. If you have a big church, though, and you have staff there all throughout the week, maybe think about some type of buzz-in system. So maybe we keep our church locked up, Monday through Saturday. People who have keys at work there, they can let themselves in. If people come, we can talk through an intercom and we can buzz them in. That might be appropriate, that may be not. I don't know how much it would cost either. Lights. So I already talked about, trying to eliminate darkness. So let's talk about lights inside. Is it possible for me to sit in the middle of the street in my car? Can I look through your front door and see into your church? Let's say it's a glass door. If that's physically possible, then you should think about leaving that hallway light on all night long. Because as a police officer, if I'm like, hopefully I'm in condition yellow, and I'm like, man, there's someone walking around in the middle of this church at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's not usual. I can go check that out, right? But if you leave the lights off, and I have that capability, but you leave the lights off, can I see if anybody's in there? Probably not. So something to think about. That might not be appropriate for your church. I might not be able to physically do that no matter where I park in the parking lot or the street. But if it's possible, leave a light on. You should have a light on, in my opinion, all the time on all your exterior doors. If someone's going to kick in a door to break in, to steal from the church, they're probably going to use a main entrance, front door or back door, right? The front door on most churches are glass, or at least half glass. It's not very hard to break glass. Keep the lights on around your exterior doors all night long. Turn them off during the day if you want, or have them on a timer. But again, you're just adding that light so the cockroaches don't hang out in the light. They want to hang out in the darkness. Talk about CPTED real quick. CPTED stands for, hold on, I had it a minute ago. Crime prevention through, yes, environmental design. I was close. You can do all types of stuff to make your building, make your church, make your school, make your whatever more secure by just the environment outside. So here's an easy example. Can someone hide behind this bush or tree, whatever this thing is? Can you hide behind that and break into the house? Absolutely you can. Now granted, I understand that this is a corner and there's no window right there. But if there was, could someone hide behind there as easily and break in and not get seen? Not as easily, right? So CPTED talks about nothing higher than 3 feet and nothing lower than 7 feet. It's really hard to hide behind stuff if you keep it really high and really short, right? If you have, you can have officers come do CPTED evaluations on your church. Let's say you have a corner of a building where someone can hide real easily. Well, maybe let's make it aesthetically pleasing. We put a giant flower pot right there and we fill it full of real thorny plants. So all right, if you want to hang out back there, we're at least going to catch some DNA off you. Whatever the case is, you can use things like that to your advantage. I am not CPTED certified. Matthew is. He's back there. He's the one with the mic. We'll take another break here in a little while, or after class, if you have questions about CPTED, go pick his brain. But it's all about the environment around the facility, making it safer for everybody. All right, we're going to move into your security teams. We've been kind of talking loosely about them all night long. Potentially, just food for thought. Okay, if you're having trouble gathering a security team, a volunteer security team, maybe throw out to them, instead of doing an offering every week, your service to the church is your offering. Just food for thought, right? How many security officers do you need per day or per service? Maybe you want 5 on Sunday. Maybe you want 2 on Wednesday. Maybe you want 1 or 2 on Sunday night. Whatever the case is, whatever you think your need is, discuss that. Do you have any off-duty officers in your congregation? Are they a part of your security team? Do you want to ask them to be part of your security team? If they don't want to be part of the security team, maybe you can at least pick their brain. Hey, do you have any thoughts? What are your security thoughts on this? Is there something you think we should do? Where do they sit? Where do they sit when they come to church? Are they toward the back, where they're back somewhat to the wall and near an exit? Maybe, maybe not. You know, maybe you ask them, hey, do you carry to church? They may or may not tell you. They may or may not feel comfortable with telling you that. It kind of depends on your relationship. I can tell you I carry to church. I mean, I carry everywhere, but I carry to church. And I sit in specific places because I'm right-handed. I sit, so for my church, I sit on the right side of my sanctuary. Main doors between us, because I'm right-handed. If I need to engage someone who comes through that door, it is better for me and I am faster to go this way compared to me being a right-handed shooter having to draw and then twist this way. It's just body mechanics. It works better for me. I take that into account on where I sit. I take that into account where I sit at Applebee's. You know what I mean? So just things to think about. Training. Is the church going to pay for or provide any training to your security team? It's up to you. Training's expensive. It can be. If you don't provide training, what is your realistic expectation of your security team? Something to think about. If I don't train you how to deal with someone or how to de-escalate someone, do I expect you to really know how to do it effectively? If I don't train you to carry a firearm responsibly and to use it appropriately, do I expect you just to be able to do that? I don't know. Probably not. If I don't allow you to be armed, do I expect you to go hands-on with a guy with a machete who's going to come in and try to commit a mass murder? It's probably a little out there. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Seems to think about it. Money's tight for everybody, and I get it. But if you have a designated security team, you probably need to think about some type of training. And again, when we talk about medical training, those are good people to send through those trainings as well. Do you let them be armed? It's the church's call. Do you let them be armed? Is it open carry or concealed carry? It's your call.
Okay, if you do not have a concealed carry permit, but the church allows you to be armed, are we breaking the law by being armed in the church?
Church is private property. Church is private property. I do not need a concealed carry permit. Let me rephrase. You do not need a concealed carry permit to carry concealed in church. As long as they allow you to do so, it's private property. Same thing with your house. You can carry concealed in your own house because it's your property. Now, understand that once you leave the church grounds and you don't have a concealed carry permit, you're in violation. Does that make sense? You know, that actually might have changed. As I say, now that we're constitutional, we're a constitution, I don't think.
It did change. Yeah.
As I say, now, as soon as I started talking there, I was like, I think I'm wrong here. You can carry in any fashion anywhere in the state as long as
You're over 21 and don't have any reason to not lawfully own a firearm.
As long as we're talking about a pistol, he says as long as you're over 21, you're legally able to carry. As long as it's a pistol. If you're 18 right now, you can carry a long gun. It's legal. As long as you're not going into schools and federal buildings, things like that, places that are designated. Sorry. Strike what I said like the last 30 seconds. Everything else is perfect. The last 30 seconds, not so much. Yes.
Would requiring them to have a concealed carry permit at least ensure that they had had some form of training with their hands?
The question is, if I require my security team to at least go through the concealed carry course and have a concealed carry permit, doesn't that basically require them to go through some form of training? The answer is yes, some form of training.
It's a joke.
Well, I'm getting there. Is it quality training? It depends on your instructor. The state of Kansas, the concealed carry requirement for the training is, I think it's 2 days. I think. It's very, very minimal. It's very, very basic. It's very rudimentary. It's not high quality. I'll put it that way. It doesn't matter how good of an instructor you have. It's not going to be super high quality. But it is something. It is something. So, is it 8 at all? Man, I've never been through it. Luckily, I don't have to. But that's scary. It's only 8 hours. I thought it was 2 days.
Yeah, but almost all of it's classroom. The part about where you actually go out and shoot is about 30 minutes.
Well, it's not enough time. I'll answer this question, then I'll throw out some other comments.
Question is comment. The other thing that the concealed carry does for you as a church, it relieves you of the expense of a background check for insurance purposes.
So that's good to know. I didn't know that. I was going to talk about insurance and bringing it up. So that's good. When we talk about training for firearms, here's something else I want you to think about. I encourage you to seek out training, okay? Especially when we talk about guns. Not only how to shoot. Learning how to shoot, is that important? Absolutely. Knowing how to hit what you're intending to hit, is that important? Absolutely. Knowing when to shoot, that's as important, if not more. Okay? Very important. And guess what's not covered in 98% of your shooting schools? When to shoot. I can go to almost any school. I can go to a handful of shooting schools within 2-hour drive from here and put 2,000 rounds down range over 2 days. Awesome. I have a blast doing it. We don't ever talk about when your gun should come out of the holster, when you should fire. That's very, very important. That's training you need to seek out if you're going to allow your security team or you're going to tell your security team to be armed, in my opinion.
Something else we start seeing in our church, it's not only when to shoot, but what to do when uniformed law enforcement officers.
We're going to cover that. We're going to cover that. It's an important thing. When cops show up and I'm a good guy with a gun, what do I do so I don't get shot by the cops? Very important. We're going to go over that. I got a couple of slides on it. All right. Like we have on there, check with your insurance companies. Does it affect anything? That's your volunteer security team. That's your members from your congregation. Do you want, instead of having members from your congregation do it, do you want to hire a private security company to provide your security? It's up to you. It's going to cost money, but it also will be a lot less hassle for the church. You tell them what you want, their job is to provide it. Right? These are just some of the things that you can do. Fire, intrusion, access control, 24/7 monitoring. You can read it from there. You can almost outline what you want. The more stuff you get, the more it costs. You can ask for armed security versus unarmed security. All right? It's an option for you. All right? But understand that it will be an expense to the church. And again, does that affect your insurance? If you're going to go with security, make sure you know what you're paying for.
Oh, I'm not a security guard. I'm a security monitor. I only notify people if there's a robbery. There's a robbery.
Make sure you know what you're paying for. All right? Do you guys need a break? You want to keep rolling? Rolling. All right, so let's talk about guns. Let's talk about open carry. What is open carry? Pretty simple. The gun's out, it's visible. Okay, it's typically outside of the waistband holster, usually on someone's dominant hip. All right? Good and bad, there's lots of different arguments. Some people will argue that it's a faster draw and you need less training because it's open carry. I don't necessarily agree. All right, so what their argument is that it's faster because there's nothing in the way. If I need my gun out, I just get it out. Right? Compared to concealed carry, I have a shirt over it. I have to clear that shirt, whether I have to pull it up, sweep it, and then get it out. All right? It's an argument. My counter argument, it's a training issue. Food for thought. All right? If you have your gun out, does it discourage members of your congregation? Does it discourage guests attending your church? Things to think about. How does it make your congregation feel? It's going to be a big topic. It's going to be a very big topic. All right? Again, things to think about. Let's say you have a security team, and let's say you tell them, I want you to carry a gun. You're all concealed carry holders. I want you to carry a gun. Do you dictate as a church what kind of gun, what kind of ammo, and what kind of gear they use? Something to think about. Okay? Here, I have a $5 give or take Glock. Okay? Awesome gun. That's what we carry. I have a lot of them. This is a $10 crap holster. If anybody has a Phobos in here, I'm sorry. Okay? Here's reality. People like to spend their money on guns. They don't like to spend their money on gear. This $1,200 to $1,500 pistol in a $10 to $20 holster. That's not good. Okay? That's not good. This holster right here, this is called a paddle holster. So this back part goes inside your pants. The gun sticks out. 3 rivets attach this holster to this paddle. You literally can walk up, grab the front of that holster, and rip it off somebody. It's simple. We've done it. We've done it in training. That's not good. Our department dictates what calibers I can carry, what kind of ammo I can carry, and what I can carry it in to some degree. The whole point is don't carry stuff that's going to get yourself or someone else hurt. Right? If I have a $1,500 Kimber 45, you spent too much money on a gun for one. But good for you. Are you carrying it in at least an $80 to $100 holster? If you're carrying a $1,500 gun and a $20 Uncle Mike's nylon holster, there's some issues. And you see that all the time. If you see on the internet people making fun of open carry and like they're at Walmart, you always see some expensive gun and some very low quality holster. It's all flopping off the person. The gun looks like it's going to fall out. That's bad. That's bad. That's reality. If in a professional field, so we're talking about security, talking about law enforcement, if I draw my gun, this is my opinion, if I draw my gun and my holster collapses, that's a bad holster. Right? Because if I'm doing something dynamic, all right, you know what? I don't need this smoke wagon anymore. I need to put it away. And this thing is collapsed. I now have to use my other hand. I have to look at what I'm doing to holster this thing. Okay? What am I no longer paying attention to? Everything else. My situational awareness is gone because I have to focus on putting my gun away. Compared to like a Kydex holster or some type of good quality holster, it keeps its form. Gun out, gun away. Gun out, gun away. It doesn't change on you. Something to think about. Okay? Just something to think about. It's something for you to ponder. Is it a deterrent? Yes and no. It might be. If someone is scoping out churches and they're like, you know what, I'm going to do this at a church. Let me figure out which one. And I go into your church and I see 7 guys walking around all carrying a gun, I might not want to do it at this church. I might get a couple guys, but guess what? I'm going to get shot before I can get my number up. What do active shooters look for? What are they trying to achieve? The highest kill count. Why? Because active shooting to these guys is like a video game. If I'm playing a first shooting video game, what am I trying to do? Kill as many people as I can. What are they trying to do here? Get the highest kill count. It's the same thing. Okay, so it might be a deterrent. You, however, might also be the first target. Keep that in mind. If I go into your church and I'm going to do something bad and I see that you have a gun, who's probably going to be the first person I'm going to shoot? You, because who's going to shoot back at me? If he's down, nobody. Right? If I'm going to commit a mass shooting at a school, you should target the school resource officer first. Reality, right? Who's on site that's going to try to stop me? Should. Okay? Things to think about. Concealed carry, so just the exact opposite of that, right? My gun's covered up. Here's something I want you to consider though, okay? I can have the outside waistband just like this. If I put on a sports jacket and I have one button buttoned, it's concealed, right? But I'm still outside of the waistband. I can still be fast, okay? So concealed carry doesn't necessarily mean inside the waist, which is inside your pants. That's where if you're concealed carry, typically it's inside the pants, ankle, something along those lines. But all you got to do is just cover it up. So just keep that in mind. You can have a security team outside the waistband holster and a good solid holster. Just cover it up with a sports jacket. That's a possibility, right? You see the picture down here. You can hide guns everywhere, all right? It's not a big deal. Some people say it's a slower draw. Again, I think it's a training issue, all right? If you train, it's not that bad, okay? Second to a second and a half, draw to the rounds on target. That's pretty fast. That's pretty fast. You do maintain tactical surprise, okay? So if someone comes in and they're looking to do bad things and you're concealed carry, they don't know, A, there's guns in the church, and B, they don't immediately know who has those guns. You maintain tactical surprise. We're going to watch a video here in a few minutes that's going to talk about one of the other nice things about concealed carry. It's let you position yourself. Let's say Tim over here is acting kind of weird. I don't know if I'm going to have to shoot him yet or not. We haven't got that far. But maybe I reposition myself over here. I now have a clean backdrop. He's not really paying much attention to me because I'm not being threatening to him. I now unbutton my jacket. Maybe even I have my hand on my gun at this point. Maybe I draw the gun that's behind my back. Him not knowing that I have a gun and I'm on the security team has allowed me to move into a better position to take action if need be. Does that make sense to everybody? Again, training. I can't harp that enough. If you're going to have guns involved, you need to have training. When to shoot and how to shoot. You really, really, really need to have that training. Here's that video.
Hey guys, Steve here from Top Guns out of Terre Haute, Indiana. Today we're going to take a little bit of time and talk about carrying concealed versus carrying in the open. For today's purposes, carrying concealed means that you basically have a firearm that is typically inside the waistband or on an ankle in a pocket, and it's not visible to the public. Carrying in the open often will be an outside the waistband holster, and often will be visible by the public due to the fact that it's not typically covered up with any articles of clothing. So let's start off with talking about some of the pros or some of the arguments that people would give if they were carrying in the open. First and foremost, it is a little more comfortable, and I can't disagree with that one. Second, I often hear the argument that it allows easier access and perhaps makes for a quicker draw. I also can't argue with that one. Next, some people just want to express their right. They say it allows them to express their right to carry a firearm. The last argument that I often hear is that it can act as a deterrent. Now let's talk about some of the cons and whether or not all those are exactly correct. First and foremost, it is easier for someone else to access your firearm. Yes, it may be quicker for you to access, but it is also easier for someone else to access that firearm. And so ultimately it's up to you to protect and make sure that your firearm is not getting into the wrong hands. Second, does it act as a deterrent? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I think more importantly is you lose a tactical advantage of the element of surprise, which is absolutely critical and far more important than speed, in my opinion. I think that giving or tipping your hand to someone and giving them the advantage of knowing that you have a firearm certainly makes you probably the first target in the room. All right, guys, the next one, although it may not be a major issue, it is still a bit of an inconvenience, and that is the fact that if you are carrying in the open, there's a good chance that you're going to have non-gun friendly or people that don't necessarily understand the concept of carrying a firearm. They may call law enforcement, and whether law enforcement agree or disagree with you, at the end of the day, if they get a call, they have to follow up on that call. And so just the inconvenience of being stopped a little more frequently might be yet another reason for, or an argument for, not necessarily carrying open carry. Lastly, you do have some environmental factors to take into consideration. So let's say it's raining, snowing, whatever it is that you have going on outside, and you've now opened up your firearm or your sidearm, you've made it subject to those elements. And so that can take a toll on a firearm as well over time. So let's take just a minute and talk about carrying concealed. It's kind of the opposite of carrying in the open as far as the arguments go, but there might be a few that don't completely line up. So, for instance, I love the fact that you retain the element of surprise. I think that's critical. I think it's far more important than how fast I can get my gun out and into play. The fact of the matter is, if there's a firearm that's already drawn on me, I don't care how fast I am, I'm probably not fast enough to get my firearm out and on target and to neutralize the threat or incapacitate fast enough to warrant taking that risk. So, for those of us that are not in the movies, perhaps keeping the element of surprise is in our best advantage. Secondly, the fact that it does take a tad bit longer, the reality is for those of you who do practice, it can be almost just as fast as carrying open carry. And I will say this, I have found that carrying it inside the waistband for me has actually increased my speed as opposed to carrying outside the waistband, because my clothes were getting snagged up just a little more on an outside the waistband because the gun happened to stick out just a little further from my side. And so when I went to clear my shirt or my jacket, it was catching on the handle or the grip of the firearm a little more frequently. Now that I've gone to an inside the waistband, I have a lower riding holster. I don't have to draw my shirt up or my jacket up as high to clear that firearm. On top of the fact that you do maintain the element of surprise, hopefully, you've also made it a little bit harder for someone, just in case they do find out you have a firearm, to take it away from you. The last particular point that I'm going to make is a pro for carrying concealed and a con for carrying out the open, and that is, in a situation where maybe you're not even the intended threat, the fact that you are carrying concealed and the fact that you have the element of surprise, that alone allows you to get to your firearm quicker, but more importantly, it allows you to get into a position where you're ready to draw your firearm a lot more quickly as well. And certainly, while maintaining the element of surprise. Let me explain what I'm talking about. In this particular instance, if the subject is now posing as a threat to maybe someone else, there's an argument going on, whatever it is that's going on, or you're in a business and someone's walked in and they're acting shady, you're just not really sure what's going on, you're not going to pull your firearm out. It's not time for that. But at the same time, you want to be as ready as possible. And so in the case of what I'm talking about, in those types of situations, you can simply blade out. So if you were the threat, maybe you're looking at someone else or engaging with someone else, I can blade away so that I'm not necessarily focusing on you and I've taken my firearm and stuck it as far away from you as possible. And now, simply by taking my hand and putting it on my hip and even looking somewhere else at that moment, that allows me to get my hand in a position to where I'm still standing here casually while not raising the level of aggression by the subject. And what I've done is I've not only unconcealed, but I've also put my hand on my firearm, which is now going to allow me to get it into play a lot faster should I need to. So again, another instance where you potentially could get your firearm out even faster as a concealed firearm versus a non-concealed firearm. If you have any opinions that we didn't mention, please post down below. Help some of the other folks who are watching the video come up with even more ideas and more arguments on both sides. If you like what you've seen, please give us a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. Thanks. Take care.
All right. So again, I think he does a pretty good job just kind of explaining the two different ideas. Again, it's up to your individual church. One thing I forgot to mention a minute ago and talk about training. Here's one of my big concerns if you don't provide or encourage people with guns, especially on the security staff, to get training. If I only carry a gun, okay, I'm security staff, I only have a gun, does every problem I encounter become a nail? If the only tool I have is a hammer, does every problem I encounter become a nail? The answer is no, it shouldn't. But does that individual understand that? Do they think that way? You know, if you have an unruly high school kid or teenager who comes in, is this guy going to draw down on him? Because that's the only thing he has. The only thing I know is I have a gun on me and that's what I'm supposed to use. That shouldn't be the case. So again, something to think about. Let's take a quick 10-minute break and then we will finish up the evening, all right?
You know that? I'd definitely keep an eye on that guy if he walked into our church.
Which guy?
The guy that just gave that video. If he walked into the church like that, I would definitely keep an eye on him.
Absolutely. Hi.
Just when not to shoot is really important. Is there schools or trainings you know about?
There are companies like out of Missouri. There's Strategos International. Okay, they do training. So another real quick video, just talking about concealed carry. Is it easy to conceal a gun? Yeah. Absolutely it is. We're about to see how easy it is. This is a high school kid. Now this version of the video, he's already standing behind the table. But in the demo that they did here, this kid walks into the room and walks up to the table. So just keep that in mind as you watch this.
As this student's appearance demonstrates, having a lax policy about dress makes it easy for a student to conceal a weapon, and makes it difficult to identify intruders on campus. The dress code can reduce weapons violations, relieve tensions between gangs, reduce disciplinary infractions, and generally improve the atmosphere of the school. Our policy requires that schools accompany their shirts, making the
It gets better.
at all times. Our students may not wear colors and insignias that are commonly associated with gang activity. This policy was a collaborative effort
All right.
between parents, teachers, and administrators involved.
So yes, it is easy to conceal firearms. All right. That whole thing was about dress code in schools, but you get the point. That kid had a lot of firepower on him, right? So yes, you can conceal pretty easily. All right, so again, when we talk about arming the congregation, we've been talking about security teams. What about everybody else in church? Do we let them carry guns in church? Do we not? It's your choice. I don't know. It's up to you. Here's some of the unknowns and some of the scary factors. If you just say, hey, you do you, I'm not going to ask. Okay, is it legal? It's legal. Do you know the capability of the person carrying the gun? Probably not. That could be scary. And I'm talking about physical capability. Do you know their mental capability? We already talked about when is as important as how. Something to think about. Okay? Do you want to make it a gun-free zone? Not saying you do, not saying you don't. I'm just giving you things to think about, things to discuss. Okay? Here's one of the things that you got to be careful of. If you're going to allow guns in church, be vocal about it and talk about it. Okay? What I don't think the best policy is don't ask, don't tell. If you're going to allow them in church, great. Have at it. Talk to your congregation. Talk to them about being responsible. Down here, I have poor decisions, poor to no training, and complacency kills. We've already kind of talked about that multiple times. The example I have down here in bold, there's a guy in a church, I want to say it was in Maryland, but I could be wrong. But anyway, he was in church, he did a demo, he had a little .380 pistol. He was showing his pastor it, it was nice and fancy, how cool is this? He loads it, puts it away. Guy comes over, he goes, hey, can I see that one more time? Quick side note, if you do firearms, and you teach firearms, or you handle firearms a lot, if someone comes up and goes, hey, can I see that one more time? I know you put that away, can I see that one more time? Triple check your stuff before you do it. That's when accidents happen. Almost every AD that I know of, like the police range, it's all, hey, can I see that one more time? Can you show me that one? I know that was fact. You do that one more time, you're going to put a live round through something. Okay? Take the time. Anyway, guy comes and goes, hey, can I see that? It's like, sure. Pulls out his .380, he drops the magazine, he doesn't clear the chamber. Oh, look at this, isn't this cool? Bam! Shoots himself in his hand and he shoots his wife in the leg. That's a bad day when he gets home. Okay? Sir.
All right, and our church has insurance for the security personnel that are carrying. What, if any, effect is on our insurance if some random person in the congregation had a gun and thought they would try to get in on trying to take care of a situation?
The question is will my insurance be affected if one of the members of the congregation chooses to interject themselves into a situation and uses force? The answer is I have no idea.
I do know that all of the security people are actually listed on the insurance policy.
Yeah, so he's saying that his security team is listed on the security policy. They're actually specifically talked about. What you need to do, honestly, call your insurance company and ask them, because I don't know. I don't know. I would guess none. Like if I'm at Walmart and you're there legally and you interject in a lethal force situation, I don't think Walmart can be held liable, but this is America. You can sue anybody for anything. So honestly, I have no clue. You need to call your insurance company and ask them. But it's something to think about. Again, when you're talking about firearms in church, here's the deal. It's probably already happening in your church. This isn't a topic where you should be like, yeah, you know what? Some of that other stuff was cool. I think we'll skip over this one. It's probably already happening in reality. Someone in your congregation, if you have a moderate to large congregation, someone is carrying a gun, more likely than not. So the church should think about it. You should have some plans in place. If you allow your congregation to be armed, potentially some people consider it free security. I'm not so sure about that. Again, you don't know their capability, you don't know their mental capability, you don't know any of their procedures, you don't know what they're going to do. No cost to the church. Again, I think that's a pretty flimsy excuse. But is it legally acceptable? It's legal. There's nothing illegal about it in Kansas. And like I said, it's probably already being done. So we're going to move into active shooter. Okay? Someone comes into your church intent on committing a mass murder. For whatever reason. They've picked your church. What are we going to do about it? So here's just a quick definition. This is from the U.S. Department of Justice. An active shooter is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area, typically through the use of firearms. Okay? Victims are random. It's just whoever's in front of me. Why do active shooters stop killing people? They've been stopped by someone else with a gun. They stop themselves, which is usually suicide. Okay? Statistically, once you put pressure on an active shooter, police show up, an armed security officer, once pressure is put on that active shooter, they stop killing people and they usually will kill themselves. That's statistically speaking. So, someone stops them, they get bored with the act of killing. It was cool at first, but you know what? It wasn't as cool as the movies have showed it out to be. I get bored or I run out of ammo. Those are usually the three reasons active shooters stop. I cannot think of all the years I've been teaching active shooter, I can't think of a single time a shooter ran out of ammo. What do you hear on the news during active shooters? They had bags of ammo. There's always ammo left over. What do we hear in Vegas? Tons of ammo. Always ammo left over. So I don't know of a single example of that. Usually bored with the act of killing or they get stopped. What did we see in Florida? The guy puts down his gun, he takes all his crap off, and he joins in with the kids, and he runs, and he got bored. Got bored with the act of killing. It's that simple. So it's unfortunate. Have a plan. We've talked about having a plan all night long. Have a plan for tornadoes. Have a plan for fire. Have a plan for everything, including an active shooter. The U.S. Department of Justice put out a training, and I'm not going to play it, but they have a YouTube video. It's called Run, Hide, Fight. If you've never watched it, pull it up at your church with your security team, with your church leaders, and watch it. It's about a 10-minute long video. Okay? It breaks everything down real simple. Here's the best options. If I can get out of the church, if I can remove myself from the area in which a gunman is, I should do it. Run. It's that simple. If I can get out, if I can get away, then get out and get away. You can't get killed if you're not there. Makes sense to everybody, right? If you can, get out and go. Okay? If I need to snatch up my kids, then snatch up your kids and get out and go. Here's some difficult things that you need to think about. Okay? Here's some very difficult things that your security staff needs to think about. A lot of our congregations are older. Agreed? If they're in a wheelchair, if they have a walker, if they cannot get up and run and get out on their own, you need to leave them. This sucks. And this is hard to talk about. If you go and you grab the gentleman in the wheelchair to push him out of the congregation and the guy is in the doorway shooting into the room you're in, what's the likelihood you are both going to escape alive? It's very low. It's very low. It's unfortunate. Okay? You cannot help anybody if you have been shot or you are dead. You need to leave them. Okay? It sucks. It sucks. It's horrible. In law enforcement, we talk about the first officers on scene. Take Florida out of the equation, all right? First cops on scene at an active shooter, they go in and they find the shooter. You step over the 10-year-old who's shot and they're bleeding, they're reaching out for you. You push past that high school kid who is crying and is looking for someone to help them. You push past them and you find the shooter. If you stop to help that kid and you take 30 seconds to put on a tourniquet on this kid, 20 more kids just got shot. That's an unfortunate reality. Okay? If you stick around, and I'm talking about dude walks in the doorway right here, and you have the opportunity to run out that back door, you need to get out. If you stop to help the person next to you who can't physically do it themselves, then you're probably going to get shot too. And that's an unfortunate reality. Okay? If they're not in the same room, if the gunman's downstairs and he's engaging security staff and you have time to get them out, then by all means, get them out. Does that make sense to everybody? But if they're in the same room, if the gunman is in the room with you and it is an active killing field, you can't wait. You have to get out. If you don't, you can't help anybody afterwards. Sucks, but it's something you really need to think about. Leave your belongings. You don't need your purse. You don't need your wallet, or not your wallet, but your book bag. You don't need anything. You need to just get out. Okay, get out. Leave your diaper bags, whatever the case is. You don't need any of that stuff. Just get out. Don't wait for others to follow you. Okay? If you understand what's going on, you hear the gunshots, and you've identified the situation faster than everybody else in the congregation, don't be like, hey, dude, there's a gunman coming. We need to get out, and wait for people to follow you. If you've identified what's going on, you need to go. Okay? They will either catch up or unfortunately they won't. It's a sad reality, but that's the reality. Okay? Hiding. If I can't get away from the gunman, we need to try to hide from the gunman. Okay? So if I can't get out of the church, or if I can't at least get away from the building to where I'm out of the killing field, it's time to lock yourself in a closet. Something along those lines. We've already talked about it a lot of times. Turning the lights off, silence your cell phone, things of that nature. Okay? Don't just hide and wait to die, though. You hide, but you prepare yourself for the next step, which in the event you have to, it is now time to fight. And I'm not talking about backyard, you're upset with your neighbor, fist fight. This is a fight for your life. If it's time to fight, there's no hesitation. If you're hiding in a closet, if you're in that back closet back there, and the gunman opens that door, you need to A, be ready for it. And B, as soon as that door starts opening, it is time to move and it's time to fight. Because if you don't, what's going to happen? You're going to die. If you don't, what's going to happen to everybody in that closet with you? Everybody's going to die. Okay? Again, it is an unfortunate situation. And it's horrible that we even have to talk about it, but we do. Okay? What is around you that you can use to help you? What kind of improvised weapons do you have in your immediate vicinity that can help you? Is there a fire extinguisher? Probably. We in America are so scared of fires. There are fire extinguishers everywhere. There's fire retardant walls and materials everywhere. Okay? If there's a fire extinguisher near you, grab it. Understand what you're grabbing, though. I can blast the guy in the face with the fire extinguisher and take his vision. Everybody agree? If it's the powdery stuff, I'm also going to lose my vision. Agreed? Understand that. Understand your limitations. Okay, I'm not telling you not to do it, but just understand you can fill, if you're in a closet, you're going to fill that entire room up, and you're going to start coughing. It's not like OC spray, but it's going to affect your eyes, and you're going to start coughing. Okay, be prepared for it mentally. I'm going to do this, and then the fight's going to be on. Because once I empty this fire extinguisher, what do I have in my hand? A blunt object that I'm now going to beat him in the head with over and over again. Okay? And I'm going to beat him in the head until he is no longer fighting me. And then we're going to run and get away. Does that make sense? Anything you can use as a weapon, you need to use. If you don't have a firearm, you don't have any knives, okay, what is around you? A pen, a pencil. That can work. You can stab somebody in neck, eyes. All right? Understand the situation. And again, it's a fight for your life. You're protecting your life. You're protecting everybody in that room with you. All right? So if you weren't able to get out of the building and he was a better hide and seek player than you were, it's time to fight. Does that make sense, everybody? Again, horrible topic, but it's a reality. It's a serious one. We already talked about use force on that person until they're no longer a threat, until they're no longer fighting you, until you know you can get away. And once you can, either A, get out of the building, or B, if there's any fear of a second shooter, find a new hiding spot and lock down again. Those are your two best options. If there's no indication of another shooter, no gunshots, nobody else screaming, then get out. Get out of the building. Get to your designated safe spot that you already have a plan for in your evacuation. Make sense? When the police arrive, okay, this is really, 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 really important. Especially if you allow firearms or you know your security staff is armed. You need to know what to do when the police arrive. So I don't think I have it on here. Do you have some way to designate your security staff as security staff? Something to think about. Different color lanyard, maybe you have a sash on the arm, whatever the case is. Is there some way you're identifying these 5 guys as armed security for the church? That might be appropriate, that might not. If you choose to do that, make sure you relay that information to the police department. It doesn't do us any good or you any good if I don't have that information. If you decide to do that, get with your community officer. They can get that information to dispatch, or they can come to me and we can type it in there manually. And it says, so-and-so church, armed security staff. They will have a tie-dye neck lanyard, whatever the case is. Right? Hopefully, what should occur, and understand humans are involved, so I'm saying should occur, is that when officers are being dispatched and I'm flying to your location for an active shooter, dispatch should tell me there's an alert on your address and armed security is on scene and they should be wearing this. Okay? Even if you have that in place, don't rely on it. Right? Again, humans are involved. You are telling a community officer who's going to tell a dispatcher to type it in, and then you're relying on that dispatcher to relay that to another officer who's showing up, and that's the one who's going to use force. There's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of people involved there. It should occur just like it's planned. Just don't bet on it. Does that make sense? When the police get there, the big thing, within reason, I understand a high-stress situation, gunmen, gunshots, try your very best to stay calm. Okay? Try to stay calm or try to calm people down if possible. You need to do everything they tell you to do without question and without argument. All right? So if Tim, because he sat up close, if I shoot Tim down and I'm holding him at gunpoint because he's not dead and there's a gun still next to him, but I at least have shot him and no one else is getting shot right now, and I'm holding him, and the police show up and they tell me to drop my gun, what should you do? Drop your gun. Don't go, I just did your job, quit yelling at me. That's not going to be very good. All right? Don't put yourself in a situation to where, man, I really broke this thing. Don't put yourself in a situation where you just did phenomenal work. You're probably going to get a medal, and now you're going to get shot by the local police. Okay? Do whatever they tell you to do without question, without hesitation. Okay? If they tell you to put the gun down, put the gun down. If they tell you to get on the ground, get on the ground. Doesn't matter. Whatever they tell you to do it. Expect guns to be pointed at you. Expect when the cops show up and you have your gun out, or you just shot someone, expect them to point a gun at you. It's going to happen. Expect to be put in handcuffs and put in the backseat of a police car. If I just shot and killed him, it might be justifiable homicide, but I'm a suspect in a homicide. That's reality. Okay? Expect to be guns pointed at you. Expect to go in handcuffs. If I am off duty, if tonight we get done with this training, I go home, I leave to go to Walmart, I get involved in a shooting, I expect guns to be pointed at me when the cops show up, and I expect to go in handcuffs. I know every TPD officer, for the most part. There's some new guys, but for the most part, I know them all. I don't know hardly any KHP anymore. I don't know hardly any sheriff. Who's going to be your first cop on scene? Couldn't tell you. I don't really want to argue and find out. Also, I'm not in uniform. Am I betting that these new guys are going to know who I am at a first glance in a high-stress situation? I ain't betting on nothing. I'm not putting myself in a situation to get shot. Okay, so just expect all that. One of the things I taught when I was in firearms, when I was the range master, is off duty. For example, I always carry my badge in my back left pocket. It's flat. I wear it backwards. It just clips on there. It's similar to this badge, but a lot thinner. And I keep it in my back left pocket on purpose, because if I'm here, I'm right-handed. In a high-stress situation or in a lethal force situation, this hand has one job: to manage my gun. So my right hand has the gun. If I shoot a guy, or if I'm just holding someone at gunpoint and cops are coming down the street, I can pull my badge out with my left hand, and my left hand only, without any problems, without struggling with it. I can pop it out, at least do one of these things. Because as the cops are pulling up, they see a guy, they see a gun, and they see something going on over here. And so hopefully they'll at least take note of that. And if I can't put my gun down, if the situation doesn't dictate that, I'm at least screaming, I'm a cop, don't shoot me. In your situation, I'm security, I'm with the church, don't shoot me. I'm screaming this type of stuff. Maybe I'm going down to a knee. Again, maybe the situation I can't put a gun away. I'm trying to be as less threatening as possible, as fast as possible. If I did shoot him and he is down and he is no longer a threat, let's say it's obvious I shot and killed him. Do I need my smoke wagon out in my hand? Probably not. Okay? This is a good time to holster in my high quality holster that I have and take a big deep breath and wait for the police to arrive. If you have enough training, maybe you start rendering aid. Okay? Maybe you start helping evacuate the church, whatever the case is. All right? But if you don't need it out, maybe you put it away. Maybe I don't need it out, but I haven't had time to go buy my high quality holster yet, and I don't want to be jacking around with it a whole lot, so maybe I just bring it in and have it pointed down at the ground, or it's just down at my side. Doing everything I can to be as less threatening as possible. And as the police arrive, maybe now I'm doing one of these. Does that make sense? It's very, very important. Do not, with my gun in hand, run at the cops going, he's over there, he's over there. You're going to get shot. That's reality. Okay? Don't have your cell phone in your hand and do that. Have people across the country been shot by police with things in their hand that's not a gun, that's not a weapon, period? The answer is yes. What's going on? Officers are being dispatched to a known active shooter. They know there's someone is on scene with a gun killing people. What are the officers mentally preparing to do? Go into that facility and engage that bad guy. And if you go running at somebody with something in your hand in a high-stress situation, it's very, very easy for them to interpret that as a firearm. And you're going to get shot. Don't do it. Okay? Don't do it. I think I hit everything on there. We've talked about active shooters a lot all night long. I mentioned earlier maybe some medicals. Other things I want you to at least think about. Okay? Do we have a plan in place for a domestic in church? If it hasn't happened yet, it probably will at some point. Okay? It could just be two people arguing. Do you really need to get involved? Probably not in reality. Okay? But what if it's a violent domestic? Then you might need to. Right? Do we have a plan in place? Who's going to take care of that? Right? Is there a child custody issue? And it's occurring within the church, at the nursery. There's a yelling match, maybe a pushing match going on. Do you have a plan? Think about it. Have something in place. People have been killed in church, and it's not a mass murder. It's not an active shooter. Okay? It's very targeted. My example of here is Dr. George Tillard in Wichita. Okay? If you guys don't recall, he was the abortion doctor. Lots and lots of protests. All right, lots of protests. He was an usher at his church. He was doing his usher job when a guy walked in 2009, walked in, pistol in hand, walked straight up, put the gun to his head, and shot and killed him in church. Not a mass murder, not an active shooter. It is just straight up targeted murder. Okay? Things like that unfortunately happen. Terrorism, it has happened in other parts of the world, luckily not in the U.S. so far. We talked about earlier robberies. Okay? What's his name? Joel Osteen has one of those multi-mega churches, right? After one offering, the church raised over $600,000, and someone jacked that. Okay? You have a church that raised over $600,000 in one offering. That's wow. Okay? But I would assume they have a massive security team, and someone still went in there and stole that. Okay? Do you think that someone could be enticed to come in and steal from your offering plate $20, $50, $100, whatever's there? The answer is probably yes. Are you taking debit cards for offerings? No. Checks and cash, right? Checks and cash is typically what's being thrown in there. I can grab that and go pretty easy. And how hard is it for me to walk in, just point a gun, give me that, and I'm right out. I mean, you're in and out in 30 seconds. Think how fast a robbery is at a quick shop. You do the same thing at a church, all right? So again, have a plan. The mentally ill, we already talked about that. Either on their armed mentally ill, but still mentally ill nonetheless. Got called to a Catholic church over on the southeast part of town. One of my regulars, I don't think I introduced myself properly earlier. I run our behavioral health unit. So I handle mental health calls. Me and my guys, that's all we do is mental health calls. One of my regular guys was over at a Catholic church. It was cold out. The ladies of the church felt a little sorry for him. They let him in, gave him some hot chocolate. He was pretty happy there. Guess who was refusing to leave at that point? My friend. He can be violent at times, but he's a heavy meth user on top of mental illness. Okay? Kind of a volatile situation. Could be. He was pretty calm that day, but he could be in a church with these two old ladies. Okay? They eventually ended up calling because they didn't know what else to do. You need to have some type of plan in place. Okay? The mentally ill will walk into your church at some point. So, again, something to think about. Racism, unfortunately, we have to worry about that. We saw that in Charleston. Guy walks in trying to create a race war. So he went mass shooting with that intent. Again, not a lot you can do to stop someone who's really intent on doing a mass shooting, regardless of the intent. But the more plans you have in place, the more preparation you've done ahead of time, hopefully you can either A, ward it off, or lower the number of victims post-shooting. All right? Questions, comments, concerns? Anything you guys want to discuss further? Yes.
Okay, so this just came. We're talking about locking our church after. This just came up. We were just discussing it last night. Should we lock our church? Should we lock the whole church, leave one door open? What do we do?
There's a mic right behind you.
Should we lock our church? So we were discussing this. So I'm now sitting here thinking, okay, the church isn't going to be locked the whole time, just after we're all in there. So somebody's already in there that's got something. And now we lock the church. How do we get in to help us?
So here's what I'll tell you. We will always find a way in. Okay? Are there stairs leading up to your front door?
Yes.
How many?
Depends on which door we have. Like
The fewest. The fewest. Is there a door that goes inward that I can get to without stairs? I'm going to drive a car through it. Reality. If I get to a school, if I get to a building, I will find a way in.